But first up this afternoon, what would you tell the PM and Treasurer if you had the chance to get up close and personal? Today, 500 small business owners got their chance to ask Mr Rudd and Mr Swan what the global financial slowdown means to people here in Brisbane. Donna Thorne's the ABC reporter who was at the summit. Hi, Donna.
Hi, Kelly.
What was the mood of the meeting?
It was actually quite positive today, Kelly. As you mentioned, more than 500 small business owners came to the summit in Brisbane today. It was a hastily prepared summit, but the general feeling was they're pleased they're being listened to, but of course there's still a long way to go.
Who was there?
Basically, you had Wayne Emerson, the Small Business Minister, of course, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, Treasurer Wayne Swan, as well as the banks were represented. And initially, when the question and answer session first got underway, Kelly, the banks sort of took hold a bit and dominated quite a while, which met with mixed reaction from some of the small business owners because they basically wanted to get up, have a question, have their say, and let the Prime Minister know how they're struggling.
Okay, so did it get feisty at any point?
No, it didn't get feisty at all. In fact, there was some very good questions to come out of the audience, mainly to do with the BAS, making it simpler to file those quarterly returns. Also, they just want easier payroll, reductions on payroll, reductions on tax relief, basically everyday options, everyday stimuluses that can make their job easier and help them with the bottom line. In fact, Kelly, the Prime Minister didn't really announce any major packages today. He just said that they will do all they can to encourage the federal government to do contracts, to get small business contracts for federal government work. Also, they've promised, if they do have a small business owner who has a federal government contract, they promise to pay those contracts on time. If not, they will be paying interest to these small business owners. Also, to come out of it, he's also promised to inject $4 million into sort of a business advisory centre to give small business owners a go-to centre to find out more about that. And he's also urged them, if they're in trouble, if they're in strife, to go to the tax office, get the one-on-one case-by-case situation and have a chat.
Donna, from the early part of what you were saying, their issues seem to relate to things that are to do with everyday business, maybe not so much related to the current economic circumstances, but making the BAS easier, for example, and just getting rid of, or not maybe even getting rid of, but reducing all those sort of tax imposts that they have. That sounds like things that small business has been talking about a long time, not issues that would have arisen as a result of the past few months.
Yeah, and in fact, they just said it's the most important issue that they're facing. In fact, Scott Driscoll, he said that banks have to do more listening than talk. Of course, Scott Driscoll, he represents the Retailers Association here in Queensland, and he also said it's a fair bit of talk today from the banks in particular, but he wants to see some action, such as the reduction of the payroll tax, as we mentioned, and just basically less advice, more action.
All right, well, Donna, we've got Scott Driscoll on the phone, so we might get it from the horse's mouth, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Kelly.
ABC reporter Donna Thorne, who was at that small business summit this afternoon, attended by the Prime Minister and the Treasurer. Scott Driscoll, Director of the Council for Small Business, also Executive Director of the Retailers Association of Queensland. Good afternoon.
G'day, Kelly.
So the comments that Donna just made, that pretty good summation of what she said?
Kelly, I think it is. I think what people want to see now, though, they've had a few sandwiches for lunch. We're really now waiting on the dessert to come from the government, and we want to see some structural reform. We don't want to see this having been a pleasant talk fest up here in Brisbane. We've had the heavy hitters from the government here listening, and I hope it's the beginning of walking away and developing some real structural change to address some of the economic challenges that we're all going to be facing over the coming months.
Well, with the issues that were mentioned, Scott, I felt that they were ongoing issues rather than things that have been brought up during the past few months. But are they going to be exacerbated because of the current world circumstances?
Kelly, I think you're right. They are issues that have been around for a long time, and it's behest, on the government that they actually get and address those things as a matter of course anyway. But we would have really liked to have seen some more meaty issues taken up by the Prime Minister and Treasurer today.
Such as?
Well, such as potentially the depreciation of capital, an acceleration of allowing for that, which really would encourage business-to-business spending and investments back into business. We want to see the Prime Minister come good on his assurances that he'll work and put weights on the states to develop a full, Council of Government approach to things like getting rid of payroll tax or reducing tax on business insurances. They're things that the government has complete and utter control of, not only the federal government but the state governments. Now, we didn't really see a lot of that talked about today, and that's disappointing from my perspective.
Scott, those business advisory centres, I mean, they sound like a fair idea, but is that the sort of thing that is a pressing need for small business at the moment?
Look, again, they're fundamental things that should always be in place, and I think some of the people that I spoke to, and certainly from my perspective, the time for talk and advice is moving on. We really want to see some tangible outcomes in structural reforms, in taxation, in the way business is treated, because we are coming into something that's potentially going to be a bit of a credit squeeze. We're coming into something where we're hearing talk of downturns in unemployment and increases of unemployment. So we want to see things that are going to actually encourage employment, and to get rid of payroll tax would be a very real way of doing that. Yeah. And in structural change terms, well, let's get business spending on themselves and growing, and that's a great way of bringing forward depreciation on capital investment.
Scott, the sort of anecdotal things I'm hearing at the moment about small business, especially coming from the hospitality industry, is that they're not so much putting people off at the moment, it's just that they're not hiring new staff. Is that something that's being experienced across the board, or are there more industries that are now thinking about laying people off?
Look, I don't sort of think that we're at the stage where there's going to be mass unemployment anytime in the near future, but what we want to see is an addressing of structural change, and certainly the hospitality industry, the retail sector. We really aren't wanting to get ourselves to a situation where circumstances become desperate. The opportunity today was there for the government to actually give some hope and some talk around where their future plans are going to be on that. We didn't hear a lot about that. My view out of today is that we really need to maintain dialogue. I'll certainly be speaking further with the government, Prime Minister and Treasurer, about some of the really meaty structural things that we believe need to be done, not just getting photo opportunities, not just getting a lot of talk, but let's see this as the beginning today and certainly not the end.
All right, so overall, were you fairly happy with today's meeting, or did it miss some vital points for you?
Oh, look, I think it was a pleasant start, let's put it that way. I don't want to be negative about it, but I certainly think a lot more could have been done and a lot more needs to be done, just by way of structural change, so moving forward for small business and medium-sized businesses, that they can go forward with a lot more confidence and a lot more backing from the federal government in a positive way. We're optimistic people by nature. You don't go into business if you're not, but we just want to see that backing by the government and some policies that are going to give structural change and confidence back to employment.
Scott Driscoll, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Scott Driscoll, Director of the Council for Small Business, also Executive Director of the Retailers Association of Queensland.